Ladies, gentlemen, no variations thereupon. For this build, I'm going to be making the legendary Tesseract. Okay, the first step in this is going to be to construct the cube. The cube is going to be 10 centimeters on each side, and this is something I've already messed up. You see, in order to make a perfect cube, you can't just order sheets that are 10 centimeters on all sides, because you need to account for the thickness of the acrylic. So since as these are 2 millimeters thick, or they're supposed to be, I don't think they actually are, I had to order these so that other pieces, so this is a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter, the other pieces are just slightly smaller, so that when they line up on the side, and there's another one on this side, when you take into account the thickness of the acrylic on both sides, that whole length then becomes 10 centimeters. And I calculated this perfectly, because obviously I need 9.6 centimeter ends, because of 2 millimeters on each side. That makes it up to 10. I calculated that perfectly, wrote it all down, went to order it from the website, filled it all in, got to the checkout part, and then tried adding in some extra charges. So I thought, sod that, went to a different website, put it all in again and ordered it, and then realised I'd ordered it to 9.8 centimeters long, not 9.6. So there's going to be a 2 millimeter overhang, which I think I'll probably be able to get away with, because I'm going to put a reflective film on the outside. I don't want too much of an overhang because it will be noticeable, but a 1 millimeter on each side, which is 2 millimeters overall, is going to be short enough. I think that it's going to be within the margin of error of what I can do with my hand anyway, so I think I'm probably going to get away with it, but it means I've got less of a margin of error. First step, take this blue film off the surface of the acrylic. Okay, so with that done, I've arranged them according to size, and you find the sizes just by putting them on a flat surface and then feeling which sides raise slightly more. And I've arranged them according to the sizes as I've just said. So these are the 10 by 10 centimeters, the 10 by 9.8 centimeters, and the 9.8 by 9.8 centimeters. Should be 9.6, but as I said earlier, I've ordered the wrong size, and yes, I'm still bitter about it. And as you'll notice, I'm wearing gloves. The reason I'm wearing gloves is we're going to stick these together with super glue, and if you're wearing gloves and you accidentally stick your fingers to your project with super glue, then you can simply remove the glove. But if you're not wearing gloves, then you stick yourself to your project, and we want to try and avoid that. So gloves on to avoid mishaps. Right, and there is a cube that will be the Tesseract. Now, I'm not going to stick this final layer on yet, because obviously there's no electronics in there, and I need to wait for this to completely dry so that I can make a little gap for the wires to come through. And whilst we're waiting for that to dry, we'll do a little bit of fun stuff with this. So this acrylic tube is going to be the stand on which the Tesseract will sit, but I don't just want a clear tube for it to sit on. So in order to create some visual interest, I'm going to wrap this up in aluminium tape, and then taking a scalpel, I'm going to cut out a design reminiscent of some of the blue lines we see on some of the technology that interacts with the Tesseract in the first movie. It's a little bit unneat where the tape doubled over, but I have this solid part at the back which is going to hide the wire. In order to make it catch rather than just the light shine directly through, I'm going to have to put something on the inside, so I'm going to get this clear plastic, roll that up and place it on the inside. But I can't do that yet because I've got to put the wires through first, and I can't put the wires through until the cube is fully dry. So we're waiting on that to dry at the moment. Something we can do while we're waiting is to attach the cables to the LEDs. So I'm going to cut some lengths of wire and solder them in place. So a few things to mention at this point. You might notice that I've tied these NeoPixel LEDs into sort of an ampersand shape. This is a stable shape so that the wires can hold it in the air freely on their own. So I've got to now feed these wires through the acrylic box which, as you may be able to see, has got some white marks on there. That is just the super glue having dried, these little small traces that I've got on my fingers and the gloves, and then I've touched the side. This isn't a mark on the acrylic itself, and if you want to get rid of it, all you have to do is take your fingernail. What I'm going to do now is firstly scratch all the white stuff off there, and then I'll get my Dremel out to make the hole for the wires into one of these corners that it's going to sit on, and with that open I'll be able to feed the wires through. I'm not going to be able to, I don't think, get a close enough groove on the inside of these in order to make it sit perfectly the way I want it to. So I may have to run a bit of wire through the inside just to give it that little bit of extra support. But moving on from that, I've got to put a reflective film around the outside of this. So the way I'm going to do that is I've laid out some wrapping paper. This is Christmas wrapping paper, and I'm using Christmas wrapping paper because it becomes very cheap in January for some reason. And I'm just going to trace around the outside of the cube that I've constructed, and I'm going to do it so I'll trace around with it lying down with the lid at one side, and then I'm going to move it to a new position, trace around, move it to a new position, trace around, and then I'll be able to take that pattern that I've created, move it over to a reflective film, which I'll then be able to cut out more precisely without getting any pen marks on the outside of it, that then I can use to put together around the cube and know it perfectly fits. So I finally managed to get that on. I did have a couple of issues with it. The primary issue is that the perspex and the reflective film weren't being stuck together with super glue, and that's an issue you can have with adhesives rather than using a mechanical joint, because different materials require different adhesives. If you're gluing two different materials together, then you have to try and find a halfway thing, and nothing really works entirely well. So what I've done instead is I've run these two cables through, and I've glued them along the inside on the corners of the cube, doing it in the corners so it's less likely to interfere with the light coming through. These then protrude from the bottom where they can be attached to something else, but I've run two through there because then that means that it's going to resist twisting. I didn't do three. Three would be more secure, but I didn't do three because I want at least some room to try and fit the wires through. I am going to have to make that hole that I made before a little bit wider now in order to fit the wires, and that's going to be tricky. And I'm sort of over explaining it this way rather than showing, but unfortunately it's really hard for me to film in the reflective cube whilst actually working in there. So you're just going to have to do an explanation, and then I'll show you the way it looks afterwards.
A few minutes later.
Right, so there we are. So I've managed to widen the hole and feed the wires through, and in order to maintain a rigidity to the two wires, the two garden wires, the support wires, I've had to twist them around each other. That makes them more rigid and less likely to flop around, so it makes it easier to stand up. Of course, that does also mean it's taking up more of the inside of this tube, so I don't think there's going to be enough room now for me to put that reflective material in. That is the cube almost done. There's a little bit of testing I want to do with the electronics to see what's going to look best, whether to put cotton wool in or not, but that's all going to have to wait till tomorrow because I need the box that this is going to stand on before I can wire in the Arduino.
The following day.
So it's the next day, and I've got to make a box that can fit in this Arduino micro, a quick sip of tea, and still be large enough in order to support the cube. I've set the cube aside for now. I've got a sheet of plywood, and what I'm going to do is mark out on there several pieces that are going to fit together in order to make a box that's wide enough in order to create stability for what will be something that's top heavy, and can fit this inside and can still have a cable come out and still have the computer accessible so that I can reach in, take it out if I want to change something with the code. Let's grab ruler. Pencil's broken, need a pencil sharpener. So that's all set up. I didn't quite manage to get my joints accurate enough that I could just hold it together with the joints and the wood glue, but I didn't think I would, so I've had to use hot glue as well. And I've also removed this top lid because the angle it sits at is going to keep flapping open, and it's going to pull the film down and create more bubbles, and there's already quite a lot on there. If I was being smart, I would have put the flap on the opposite side so that the gravity would hold it down, but I didn't. So the only thing left to do now is to do the electronics program, the Arduino, and I'm not going to show that part because the code that I'm going to use isn't my code. Basically, I'm just using the very basic setup program, and I'm just adjusting it slightly so it only does blue colour and it's only the snaking lights. So yeah, very little changes to there, and it's not my code, so I'm not going to show how you do that because that would be dishonest. But let me tell you, if you've never built a box yourself using hand tools, I recommend you do it because I'm very much a novice when it comes to woodworking, but there is very few things as satisfying as building a box yourself, even if it's a crap little box like that. So yeah, I'll be back once I've programmed this and sorted it up.
A little later.
Right, so I've programmed the Arduino now with a simple running light animation with several different shades of blue. So it's just going to keep running through that, no big deal. Before I seal it up, however, I want to create a little bit of cloud on the inside. I don't want it to be a clear box. The reason being that with this reflective panel on the outside, what will happen is the lights will reflect on the inside and you'll get a sort of infinity mirror effect with multiple different chasing light animations, especially in the dark. While I've got all these lights on, you're probably not going to see it, but when it's being used as a lamp, then you probably see a reflection on each of the sides. Now, to stop it looking exactly the same on the inside and to sort of diffuse the light a bit, I'm going to put some cotton wool in there. If you're doing this on the cheap and you just want a thing that looks like a Tesseract, get a cube of plastic like this, just put a blue LED in the middle of it and then fill it with cotton wool. You get a similar sort of effect and it'll be done really cheap and really easy. I'm going for a more fancy version, but I'm still going to use the cotton wool around the LED method. Right, I just did the test in the dark room away from all the bright lights so I didn't record it, and it looks quite good. What I've had to do is really pull apart the cotton wool so it's really whisper thin in order to allow enough of the light through from the reflections on the other side. All I've got to do now is final touches. Because this wood looks a bit out of place, I'm going to cover that in the same aluminium tape as the central pole there, and I'm going to super glue this top on. sure how well this is going to show up with it being this bright, but there is a glowing Tesseract. Actually, I'm not certain the camera's going to pick up on this, so let's have some light and make it a Loki green. I am burdened with a glorious purpose. So this is the Tesseract. It's turned out quite well. I do get a little bit of reflection on the inside, but I've had to put so much cotton wool in there, it's difficult to get reflections over these lower sections because the cotton wool's obviously in the way, even though I've pulled it out and made it as fine as I can. So I wasn't able to get the light to come down this shaft because there's nothing to reflect it. If I were to lift this up, there would be a little blue dot that's shining on the Arduino, because the light will just go straight down from in here. There's nothing to stop it and diffuse it. I did try and put the diffusion material in, but it's too flimsy with how thick the wire is that I've had to use. And I could have got around it by using a thicker tube, but I like the look of it being a thin tube and just like floating there in space. So it's a bit woo woo woo, and I think I prefer having that floating effect. The colour that I've got on there is blue constantly with 255 on all of the blue. But I've got an extra run that goes around with some green in it, and then an extra run that goes around with green and red in, but in small amounts, slightly more green from the second one. So you get a sort of chasing energy spike that goes around within the lighter blue, but always having the dark blue backdrop to it. And if you enjoyed watching this, then there is a thing up here that allows you to subscribe to the channel, and this up here is another video that the algorithm has picked out especially for you. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.